شوية. بسم الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam wa ala rasulillah. I'd like to start by sending peace and blessings upon our beloved Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the best of creation and mercy to mankind. And I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight for the Ask the Sheikh show, where we are pleased to be joined by our very own Sheikh Jameel in discussing the blessed month of Ramadan and how we can strive to make it a month of productivity. So to start by introducing Sheikh Amr, he's someone that needs limited introduction, but he was born and brought up in Glasgow, Scotland. He graduated from the University of Strathclyde and then went on a journey of over 10 years, traveling the Muslim world, studying at the hands of some of the most renowned scholars in the Middle East. During his travels, as a student of knowledge, he studied a variety of schools of thoughts, and his balanced studies in both secular and religious areas give him a combination of sound scholarship with a profound understanding of society. So alhamdulillah, we are very blessed to have Sheikh Amr joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, I'm okay. How are yourself?
Alhamdulillah, very good. So Sheikh, so this first episode of Ask the Sheikh show, we wanted to start by welcoming the month of Ramadan. And I think as we start this month, I wanted to just take it back to the beginning and ask, why is it we fast as Muslims?
So, alhamdulillah, salatu wa salam wa rasulullah. So I think the first thing we have to note is that we're on this earth to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're taught how to worship him through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for example, our 5 daily prayers, he showed us how to pray. And similarly, fasting, this is something which is mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, so as us, fasting has been prescribed or made obligatory upon you, the same way it was made obligatory upon those before you, so that you can attain God consciousness or taqwa. So fasting is something which Allah has ordained upon us. Again, it's a test of our obedience, just like the prayers are, because God doesn't need our fasting, he doesn't need our prayers. It's actually all the benefits all for ourselves. And this was something that's not unique to Islam. Nations before us, Christians, Jews, would also fast as well. Maybe not the same way that we fast now, but they certainly had a type of fast by which they gained closeness to God. So we were given fasting, and so the month of Ramadan is an obligatory month of fasting. Out with Ramadan, we are encouraged to fast. The Prophet used to fast on a Monday and a Thursday. Ibrahim alayhi salam used to fast 3 days every month. Dawud used to fast alayhi salam every other day. So fasting in itself is beneficial, and anyone who's fasted will know from experience how your behavior is different when you fast, how your demeanor is different. Everything about you, there's certainly a change, and it's because it's when you deny the body, the soul or the ruh becomes more alive or stronger. And so this is a very unique type of worship, because the things with like prayer is that other people might see you praying. Fasting, nobody really knows whether you're fasting or not, because you could be going into the cupboard and eating or whatever when no one's looking. So it's a very intimate form of worship with God, and that's why in the Hadith Allah says that fasting is for me, and I will give the reward for it. In other words, it's a very unique type of worship for me, and I will give whatever reward I wish to give.
And on the topic of reward, what is there a set minimum amount of reward that's gained within this month that's not gained in any other month of the year?
Yes. So the hadith says, "Man sama Ramadan, imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi." Whoever fasts Ramadan with iman, right, faith, wa ihtisaban, looking for Allah's reward, will have his past sins or her sins forgiven. So by virtue of just fasting, certain types of sins are forgiven. It doesn't mean all your sins are forgiven, but certain types of what they call minor sins are forgiven by just fasting.
Subhanallah. And on that topic of being a month of forgiveness just by fasting, the act of fasting, is there any specific acts of worship that's recommended during this month?
I think the thing is, Ramadan from the beginning to the end is full of blessings and openings. The hadith says that when Ramadan comes, literally the doors of heaven are opened, and the doors of hellfire are closed, and the devil is chained up. So this is something which happens only in this month, in the entire year. So there's almost like divine intervention, divine help from the divine. We don't experience it any other time of the year. So in this month, obviously fasting is the biggest thing because it's a very clear thing. We're all going to iftar and so on. But then we also, our prayers, we have a specific type of prayer which we only have in the month of Ramadan. It's not there in any other month, which is the Taraweeh prayers. And again, that same hadith that says, "Man sama Ramadan." There's another version that says, "Man qama Ramadan," which basically means whoever stands in the month of Ramadan with iman, looking for God's rewards, will have the past sins forgiven. And standing here is the Taraweeh prayers. So these are extended prayers that we do, which we can't do any other time of the month. So that's another unique aspect of the month. And then Ramadan is also the month in which the Quran was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The verse is "Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran," the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to revise the Quran every single year with his teacher Jibreel alayhi salam. So Jibreel is coming down from the heavens, and he's revising the Quran, the book of Allah, with the beloved of Allah, whatever had been revealed up to that point. So every year, this is a yearly practice which happened every single year. And then obviously we have not only those blessings, we also have the blessing of having the best night of the year in this month, which is the night of power, Laylatul Qadr. Khayrun min alfi shahr, is better than 1,000 months. Not the same as some people say it's like equivalent to 1,000 months. It's not. It says better than 1,000 months. So we actually don't know how good it is. 1,000 months is approximately 83 something years, but it's basically more than that. So it's more than a lifetime of what you could do in a lifetime. And that night obviously is most likely to be in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So again, there's just like countless blessing after blessing. Every action you do is multiplied in reward. If you do a nafil act, it's like the reward of a fard act. If you do a fard act, it's like 70 fard acts outside of Ramadan. Anything that you do, even small things like smiling, making an intention, anything you do in this month will be multiplied more than it would have been before or after Ramadan.
So I think, needless to say, then it's a month that's with so much barakah. It's a month that actually we should have targets. We should have a set criteria almost of things to get throughout this month in order to maximize it. And what's your thoughts in terms of targets?
Yeah, you do want to maximize the time because we feel this every year, isn't it? You start Ramadan before you know it, you're finishing Ramadan. The month does go very quickly. And it is the best month of the entire year. So you want to maximize the blessings of the month. I think a word of caution would be that sometimes people in the beginning maybe get too excited, and so they start like really pushing themselves. I was just talking to one brother, first fast, And he said, he's working as well. He said, I came back from Taraweeh, and then he goes, I was thinking, shall I go to sleep? Shall I not go to sleep? It's 12 o'clock because I stayed up to 2 o'clock. And then, to get up again at 4 o'clock. So 2 hours of sleep. And then I was talking to him about 7 o'clock. He had a headache. And I said, look, what you should have done is went to sleep straight after Taraweeh. The first night, don't go excessive, because what will happen is it'll catch up with you, and then you become fatigued and you run out of energy. So it's very important to always pace ourselves properly, because the point where you really want to accelerate, or you really want to push yourself for most of the last 10 nights. So if you're fatigued by that time, you're not going to have the energy. So you want to slowly build it up. So you should have targets, but have realistic targets. Maybe like reading one chapter of the Quran every day, a certain amount of maybe istighfar that you want to do, a certain amount of la ilaha illallah you want to do, maybe certain books you want to read, like a book in Seerah or whatever it might be. So you give yourself targets which are realistic. And obviously people differ. Some people are working. They can't have the same targets as somebody who's not working. A student who's got exams versus a student who's not got exams. Somebody who works night shift versus somebody who works during the day. So there's lots of factors. A lady that's got young children versus children who are older. So everyone's circumstances vary, but the common factor should be that we all make extra effort. We make more effort this month than we do ordinarily.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you talk about pacing yourself and then actually saving enough energy in the tank almost for those last 10 nights, which are the nights of push, if you like, rather than going all in the beginning and then actually having Ramadan burnout, which I think lots of people experience very quickly, ambition very quickly. There's a way once people get spiritually or physically fatigued, I should say physically fatigued. So that's really interesting. The next question then is quantity versus quality. You mentioned about doing a certain number of adhkar a day, a certain amount of Quran, for example, a day. Is this a month of, because I've got people I speak to that, they talk about, should we try and get through the entire Quran in English, for example, for the first time, try to read it with understanding. Maybe they've not done that before. So as an opportunity to use this month as a month of openings and understanding, rather than just reading it as they've been reading it. But the rewards of reading it are immense at the same time. So what's your take on quantity versus quality?
So see, every action, or I shouldn't say every action, every act of worship has got its own merit. So prayer has got its own merit, fasting has got its own merit, reading Quran has got its own merit, helping your brother has got its own merit, making the iftar for other people has got its own merit, smiling at your partner, smiling at your children has got its own merit. Every action that we do, let's just say it carries a certain light, okay? Let's say every good action has a light. Now, what you want to do is just do one thing, because you're only getting one source of light. What you want to do is have multiple lights. So have a portion. So say for example, you're working and all you can set aside is 2 hours every day. And that's 2 hours, during the night, during the day, adding it all up, you've got 2 hours. So what you should do is split that time. It should be like 2 hours just reading Quran, that's it. Split it up into a portion that you're going to spend reading the Quran, a portion maybe you listen to the Quran, a portion you read the tafsir, a portion you just read the English translation, a portion that you read a book, a certain book on a particular topic, and a certain portion that you're doing dhikr. So you basically split that time up, that 2 hours, you split it up into maybe, 10 parts or something. So you're doing 20 minutes of this, 20 minutes of that, 20 minutes, so that you're not doing just one thing, you're getting 10 different lights into your life rather than just one source of light. So you want to do, like this, for example, what you're doing, you're taking time out to do the show. So this is, you're doing a certain act, which is da'wah, right? So that's got its own light. You see, so doing a portion of as many different things as you can is a good way to do it.
And I like the example you gave, Sheikh, of using lights. This is a month of light, and doing these acts of light throughout the month and multiple lights. In terms of dhikr, is there any specific dhikrs that you think are more beneficial during this month, and that people would benefit from doing?
I mean, the greatest dhikr is the Quran, because this is the month of the Quran. And if you look at the Prophet's example, he would revise the Quran, like I said, with Jibreel alayhi salam. So Quran is definitely, is probably the biggest difference that we would see. People really push themselves in Quran. I mean, Taraweeh is just listening to Quran as well. Dua, obviously making dua. The Prophet taught Sayyidina Aisha that in the night of power to read the dua, Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. But there's no reason you can't do this throughout the month. And we used to, in different countries when I was studying there, we used to read this throughout the month. So making lots of dua. Quran is probably the biggest one. And then I would say, if you had to say three ones which I would recommend people doing extra or more of, one is istighfar. So seeking Allah's forgiveness, because that's like a cleansing of the inward. La ilaha illallah, because the hadith says renew your faith through la ilaha illallah. So it's a refreshing, a renewing of the faith, strengthening of the faith. And then praying on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "You're praising once, Allah praising that person 10 times." So if somebody just did Quran and they just did increase themselves in how much istighfar they do, how much la ilaha illallah they do, and how much salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam they do, I think that would be a good start. And the thing with dhikr is you can do it when you're in your car. You can do it when you're getting your shopping at Asda. You can do it when you're walking. You don't have to be in a state of wudu. Menstruating women can do it. It's anyone can do it in any kind of circumstance. So even when you're working, if somebody's working, they can just be reciting something.
Excellent. And on the topic of the greatest form being Quran, what advice do you give to people then that actually have difficulty reading Quran and they want to read Quran, but actually they maybe don't know the recitation for whatever reasons?
So the first thing is that nobody was born knowing the Quran. Right? Everyone's learned it at some point, either as children or as adults. So if you don't know the Quran, then it's like anything, and you go away and learn it. It's a good opportunity to learn. Maybe buddy up with somebody, a relative, and just say, look, can I read every day, and make it very, very simple, and make it very light. Don't say that I want to read 3 hours of Quran to you, but basically if you say, look, I just want to read 10 minutes every day. When you say 10 minutes to someone, it's not a big amount of time. Anyone, we've got Zoom, we've got phones, and you can do it with anybody really. 10 minutes is nothing, but 10 minutes every day, you'll see a big improvement, because the Quran recitation is one of those things. It's practice. It's just you have to keep practicing until you get better. And Hadith says that the one who reads the Quran with difficulty will get twice as much as reward as the one who reads it with ease. So remember, you might be finding it difficult, but the reward you're getting is immense for making that effort.
And then when people then make that effort to read the Quran, they use the month, they use their day, they use their time, any time they set aside, they try to maximize with the reading of the Quran. People then understand the significance, and we all understand the significance of the Taraweeh prayer that you mentioned. And this is often a prayer that you go to lots of institutions, and people are aiming to complete the whole Quran during this month. But one of the brothers asked me that what do you say about people who have work then in the next morning? So say people have an 8 o'clock start at work, and often Tarawih prayer can go midnight and even sometimes beyond. And then they have to get up at, for example, 4 a.m. for their suhoor, and then go back to sleep for work. So what advice do you give for people who are ambitious? They want to listen to the Quran, but they find the long Tarawih prayers very, very difficult. So what advice do you have for those?
Yeah. So I would, like I said to you before, everyone's circumstances are different. So somebody who's got an early start and is working, 9-10 hours is very different. Because some people maybe work later on, they start in the afternoon, some people start early in the morning. So for somebody who says, look, I have to work early in the morning, I'm not used to getting up in the middle of the night, if I'm sleep deprived, I can't function properly, it's affecting my work. What we would say is, look, do as much as you can. Yes, it is optimal if you can finish the Quran in Tarawih prayers, but it's not an obligation. So it's a recommendation. Also, I said this a couple of years ago, and some people maybe misunderstood what I was trying to say, but I do believe that mosques, not all mosques should do a khatam of Quran. I don't believe all mosques should do the complete Quran. I think some should do it, and some should just read short surahs, because I've seen this done, in Muslim countries, different Muslim countries. They don't all finish the Quran. Some of them just read very short surahs, and so the Tarawih is not that long. And then that would give people a choice. They can go to, the people to do the full thing can go to the mosques which are doing a khatam, and the people who have got work and other responsibilities and can't, or maybe that day they're fatigued and they can't do the whole 2 hours in standing in prayer, or 1.5 hours, they can then choose and go to the short Tarawih prayer. So there is, I know that when I said that, there was a few brothers that started short Tarawih prayers. So I do believe it. I think it happens in the Ark. They have short Tarawih prayers. So, if somebody's struggling, they can maybe join that Tarawih prayer instead, because it'll be easier. They'll be done very, very quickly. I think they start 9:45 and finish by 10:30 or something. And then that gives them plenty of time. Or the other option is, if that's too far or whatever it may be, that's the first option, I'd say. I'd say, look, go to the mosque, do as much as you can, whether that's 2, 4, 8, 10, 12, whatever it may be, and then come home, and then just finish off the rest yourself in the house with the short surahs. It won't take you that long. And that way you're at least getting the reward of praying in congregation with the Jamaat. You're getting some Tarawih with the Imam, and you're doing the rest yourself in your house, and you're at your own time and your own pace.
So almost like you've got the 20 there, you've got the 20 rak'ah you need to make up, or you can make up. And if you are able to do a period of that or part of that within the masjid, and then you get a wee bit tired, for example, then we can go back to our homes and we can finish it off in our own pace, our own surahs, just to make up those remaining rak'ahs. So it doesn't have to be fully in the masjid, for example.
That's right. And if you're tired, you're very, very tired, you can sit and pray them like the way you'd sit in the tashahhud position, on a chair, but if you're sitting at, in the end of the prayer, you can just pray the best is valid.
Excellent. And see, when people are in the masjids, for example, some people, they do the 20 rakat, and then you've got the witr prayer afterwards. And what advice do you give? Is it necessary to pray the witr prayer within the masjid? If you're, for example, got plans to then later on pray a wee bit more at the house before Fajr prayer, or is it advisable to actually do the witr with the congregation, even though people will then go home and may do additional prayers for the night?
It's not a problem to pray the witr with the Imam, and then if you want to do extra prayers later on when you go for suhoor, you can pray extra prayers after you witr as well. It's not a problem.
Sheikh. Sheikh, the month of Ramadan, when we were growing up, was often described as the month of 3 parts. What are those parts?
So there's a hadith. It's not as strong as the other ones we mentioned. The first part is mercy, the second part is forgiveness, and the last part is freedom from the hellfire. I mean, in reality, the whole month is blessed, and you could argue all of it actually is linked to mercy in one way, because forgiveness is a type of mercy. Getting freed from the hellfire is also a type of mercy as well. But it basically just talks about the 3 different phases: the beginning, the middle, and the end. And obviously, like I said, the end is like where the real gems are. The whole month is gems, but the last 10 days are special, and it's got the night of power as well.
And I think that the last 10 days is something that I want to pick up on and speak to you more about tomorrow. So I'll hold on to that for now. Sheikh, I've got a few non-specific questions that some people have sent in. The first one is, do we have to make an intention before we fast?
Yes. So intention, there is no إنما الأعمال بالنيات, the hadith, the very famous hadith, Bukhari, first hadith, actions about by intentions. So yes, you need to have intention. Then you get into the various schools of thought. So the Shafi school, for example, says you must make the intention before Fajr begins. The Hanafis allow you to make the intention up to mid-morning. I mean, the fact is, if you're getting up at Sahari time, Suhoor time, if I stopped you and said, Sulman, why are you up at 4 o'clock in the morning? You're saying I'm having Suhoor. Why are you having Suhoor? Because I'm fasting tomorrow. So you already have the intention to fast, even though you haven't said, I am fasting, but it's quite obvious what you're doing. So the intention is in the heart. So if you stop someone and said, what are you doing? They'd say, I'm fasting, so I'm eating. So the intention is, most people have the intention anyway by default. And the Malikis basically said that even if you make the intention at the beginning of the month, it's enough for the rest of the month. So I don't think it's something to worry about. Everybody knows when they're praying Tarawih, everyone knows that tomorrow is a day of Ramadan and we're going to be fasting. And that's sufficient, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. And any general suhoor/iftar tips, Sheikh, that you have? I know you've got medical students as well that delve deeper into these. But is there anything that you've found over time from your own experience, or anything even the Prophet found or advised would be sustainable to give you that energy throughout the day?
I think the first thing is, obviously breaking your fast with dates, which I think everyone knows. And dates are, they give you energy straight away. They have all sorts of vitamins, minerals, which are good for your body. Drinking water, because obviously replenishing the water you've lost throughout the day. Not overeating is important. So just because you've been hungry all day doesn't mean you go crazy at iftar time. I think not being too extravagant with food. So yes, okay, fair enough. You've been fasting, but there's no need to make 6 different dishes. Imam Haddad said that the minimum should be that you don't eat more in Ramadan than outside of Ramadan. So sometimes people want to treat themselves, and get desserts and cakes, and try and stay away from all of that stuff. Have your meal, right? Have your meal, whatever it may be, but just stick to the normal meal. You have a biscuit afterwards or something, but nothing crazy. The other thing is that eating slowly is recommended, because when you eat slowly, you actually end up eating less, because it takes your brain time to register that you're full. So you're usually full before your brain knows it's full. So to eat slowly, take your time. To not skip the suhoor. Some people it's tempting not to just skip it because it's difficult to get back up. But even if you just have water at the time of suhoor, if you have a bottle of water or something, have a few dates at suhoor time as well. Even if it's just that, some people say they can't eat, they don't feel like eating. Fair enough. But even if you have dates and water, at that time, it's still beneficial because the Prophet said, "Tasahharu fa inna fi suhuri barakah," that do suhoor because in the suhoor is barakah, is blessing. And when you do the suhoor, there's obviously the food element, right? But there's also like a spiritual element as well. It gives you a certain type of spiritual nourishment, which helps you get through the day, which you won't get if you miss the suhoor. And then it's just, you know, being sensible, isn't it? The type of things you're eating, not eating too much fried food. You know, at suhoor time, eating things which are, you know, like things like porridge, Weetabix, that kind of stuff, eggs, you know, things which are very filling, that will get you through the day, rather than just, you know, like some sugary cereal, because that will just go straight through your body. So trying to, like, you know, eat the right types of food, and just, you know, just generally, I think it's a good time to cut back. So all of us, you know, are always looking to get fitter and healthier and lose weight, and just naturally, because you're fasting, your stomach will shrink. So don't push it so that it expands again. Just let it shrink. And then after Ramadan, actually, don't go back to eating the way you were before Ramadan. Stick to the smaller meals that your stomach's become accustomed to, and you'll lose weight doing that.
I think many people can attest to actually picking up a lot more at the supermarkets, for example, or thinking they can eat more than they can, because of that shrinking of the stomach. They don't realize, or we don't realize that. In fact, once
they actually say that you should never shop when you're hungry, because when you go shopping when you're hungry, you look at things and say, "Oh, I need that as well, I need this as well," but you don't actually need it. It's just that you're hungry at that time. So, you know, don't get your shopping at the end of the day. Go when you're earlier on in the day, when you're not so hungry, because you'll end up picking up less stuff.
That's a top tip for everyone there, Sheikh. Sheikh, are there any exemptions to fasting?
Yes, there's exemptions. So obviously, fasting is a physical thing, and not everyone is physically able to fast. So if you're ill, if somebody's not feeling well, they're ill, two things: if they feel that their illness will become worse if they fast, or their recovery will be delayed, then they're allowed to not fast. Making that decision that my illness is going to get worse or it will get delayed, they have to rely on something. So that can be, they say, past experience. So I had a similar illness last Ramadan. I fasted, it got worse. So I know from experience, if I fast now, it will make me worse. Or you speak to a Muslim doctor who's practicing, so they know what fasting is, and they listen to your symptoms, and they say, yeah, that's probably better you don't fast. Or they say, well, no, you can fast. Why don't you try it and see how you go? Or something which is like completely obvious, like, you know, I don't know, you fainted or something, you know, or you're extremely, you know, you vomited or something. It's quite obvious that anyone would know that you shouldn't be fasting in that state. So illness is the first one. Then you have other people who may be exempt and may not be exempt. So in that category, you get like pregnant women who are nursing their breastfeeding children. The principle there is if they feel it will harm them or harm the baby. But again, the best thing to do is to speak to a Muslim doctor, because obviously these things vary depending on your age, depending on your physical health. If you've got like 6-7 different health issues and you're pregnant, that's very different from somebody who's got no health issues and is, you know, young, healthy, and is, you know, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be fasting. So I mean, there is going to be a nice syllabus Q&A with doctors tomorrow on our Facebook page later in the evening, so they can, you know, anyone who's got any specific questions can ask the doctors and get their advice. But that's the general principles. And then obviously, if you're a traveller, now a traveller is somebody when Fajr time came in, they were travelling at the time. So you have to be careful because some people mix this up. But if I'm traveling, if I'm going, like, for example, if I've got a flight today to catch to Istanbul, right, I have to fast that day because when Fajr time came in, I was still in my home city. So I'm not a traveler. At Fajr time, I was not a traveler. If I end up traveling during the day, travel distance, which is more than 48 miles, then I have to see it through to completion. However, if I had gone to, say, Aberdeen for Taraweeh and I spent the night there, and at Fajr time, Fajr time's coming in, and I'm a traveler because Aberdeen's more than 48 miles, and I'm intending to travel to, say, Edinburgh. I have now the choice whether to fast or not. If I choose not to fast, then I would have to make those fasts up later after Ramadan. And then obviously you have women who are menstruating. If a woman is menstruating, she doesn't fast. And if she starts the day fasting and then her menses begins, she should break her fast. And if she's at the end of her menses, then and she wasn't fasting, but say by Asr time or something, she's finished her menses, she takes a ghusl, takes a bath, starts to pray. She has to refrain from eating and drinking until Maghrib now, because her excuse, which was menstruation, has now ceased to exist, even though she will still make up that day of fasting.
Okay. So there's a few exceptions here, and I think all in all, you've advised that firstly, each circumstance, each case is actually quite unique, and no two people are the same. So firstly, for people to consult not just scholars but also righteous Muslim physicians for advice when it comes to these matters. And there is a program tomorrow as well where people can ask more about that in the evening. So as a consensus, as a starting point, people fast, for example, when it comes to pregnancy. So women would fast, because this was our next question we had, that people would fast unless, for example, there was circumstances which would either be detrimental to themselves and or to the future child, and then also looking at their existing health conditions and comorbidities when deciding whether or not one should be fasting or not.
And the thing is, the thing is, you can always start your day fasting, and then if it gets too much, you can always break it. So that's also a more cautious way to go about things as well.
And then, Sheikh, what about children fasting? Often when we were younger, I certainly remember when we were in school, it was very common for a group of friends to want to keep fasts, and we saw our families fasting, and even at young ages of 7, 8, 9, 10, for example, we would keep even part of a fast, or even at times the full fast. And what's your thoughts about that? Because we felt some people find it's encouraging and getting used to that training for the future. Whereas I've heard other things as well that some people advise not to because of the health implications and the importance of glucose for the developing child's mind, etc. So what's the Islamic perspective? Can kids fast?
So fasting becomes an obligation when you hit puberty. So if the children are near the age of puberty, it is definitely a good idea to get them fasting here and there, because they wouldn't have to do it, the next year or two anyway. So it's good for them to get some experience of fasting. For very young children who are like your 7, 8 year olds, what you can do is, give them the impression they're fasting and say, okay, you do half a day. So they just get to wake up and do suhoor or something, and lunchtime you just give them lunch and say, okay, you don't have a fast. So it's almost like involving them, encouraging them to get involved, but it's obviously not a proper fast. But as they get older, your kind of 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds who are either gone through puberty or will be going through puberty, then there's no reason why they can't fast. A few days here or there. I don't think that's going to make a huge impact on their health.
Exactly, Sheikh. And on the topic of zakat during this blessed month, this is a month where all of us are, or people love to give more during this month, and often people there's so much campaigns by charities and even just in general the reward associated with this month. We get very excited about how much reward we can get, and we try to give as much as we can. Some people give small amounts to every single day, maximizing the last 10 nights, for example. Regardless, it's a month of charity. And I was going to ask, in terms of zakats, often I find lots of people trying to give their zakats, all of it during this month. Is this a month where off zakat? Is this a month where we should be giving zakat all at once? And is it something that it can't be given throughout the rest of the year? And it's just this month, or is it otherwise?
Yeah, I think for zakat, you'd have to, have a kind of you actually need to study it a little bit to know how to calculate it. So there's two things. One is when you calculate your zakat, and the second thing is when you give your zakat. They're two different things. So you calculate your zakat depending on when you went over the threshold, what's called the nisab, the minimum amount, right, which is 87 grams of gold, or the value of all that. The first thing you went over that becomes your zakat date, for example, and that should be different for every single person. So mine could be like, for example, the 10th of Muharram. That was the first time I went over that threshold. Then after 1 year, on the 10th of Muharram, I will see if I still have I'm still over the threshold. If I am, I give zakat. Now, that means I calculate my zakat on the 10th of Muharram. Now, let's say I did the calculation that came out to £500. So I know, right, I need to give £500 zakat, but I don't have to give it on the 10th of Muharram. I can give it whenever I want. I can give it maybe over the year. I can maybe give £10 every month, £50 every month, or maybe I will just hold it and give a few bit, £100 here, £100 there. So what people tend to do is, although they've already calculated their zakat, especially if their zakat date is quite near Ramadan, they might think, well, I'll just give zakat in Ramadan to the poor because actions are multiplied. So the calculation would have been done on your calculation date, but you're free to give it whenever you want. And obviously, people are not just needy in Ramadan, they're needy all throughout the year. So I don't think we should all be just giving our zakat just in Ramadan, because then what happens for the next 11 months? By all means, if you want to give some of your zakat in Ramadan, no problem, but some of it you should be giving throughout the year, especially if your calculation date is not near Ramadan.
So it's not something that's necessarily confined to the month of Ramadan at all.
No.
And it's more deeper than that. Because I think it's interesting that I think a lot of people would benefit but by knowing that from yourself, Sheikh, because I certainly speak to a lot of people that that Ramadan is almost like the month of just zakat. But it's interesting to know that if you've gone above, then you need to know
because Ramadan is a month of fasting. It's not the month of zakat. Ramadan is a month of fasting. It's got to do with fasting. It's got nothing to do with zakat. Zakat is a separate pillar, and zakat is given when you have that money over that threshold, and that can be any time of the year. But by all means, if you can give some of it in Ramadan so you can get extra reward, but you should be giving the zakat throughout the year.
Jazakallah, Sheikh. Thank you very much. And Sheikh, just to finish with the final question, once we've gone through the month of Ramadan, we've done our fasting, we've kept our fast, we've done our Taraweeh prayer, we've read some Quran, we've met some targets, etc., and we reach the spiritual point of, or the spiritual high, some people call it, during the month of Ramadan. How do we then make sure that, or best ensure that we can maintain that once the month of Ramadan is over for the next 11 months?
So it's like Umrah. If you go to Umrah, okay, what you feel in Umrah, it's unrealistic to come back to the UK and think that you will try to maintain that. So there's something special about, obviously, Makkah. There's something special about Ramadan. So because of the virtue of the special month, it is special. It will feel special. What you feel will be different from the rest of the year. So that's the first thing, be realistic. Number two is, It's about some of the habits you inculcate in this month. So, for example, if you go into the habit of reading Quran regularly every day, then after Ramadan, continue that practice. Maybe not the same rate. So if you were used to reading one chapter of Quran every day in Ramadan, which you don't normally do, when you come out of Ramadan, try to do half a chapter maybe. If you can do half a chapter, a quarter, but basically maintain that habit, even if it's less. So whatever habits you establish in this month, try to continue them, even if it's like a small amount. So if you were doing half an hour of dhikr every day, do 1 minute of dhikr every day, rather than 0. 1 minute still something, it's still better, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever is going to be manageable and realistic, to do throughout the year. Always give yourself something which is doable, rather than, we all want to run a marathon, but you can't just get up and start running a marathon. You need to start training first, and you build yourself up slowly. So it's like anything, isn't it? The same thing with when it comes to religious practice. It doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly, Sheikh. And I think I said that was my last question, but I've got one final question. What's one thing, and it's more a personal question, what's one thing about the Prophet ﷺ, or one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that motivates you personally during the month of Ramadan?
The month of Ramadan, I think the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, would spend so much time going over the Quran with Jibreel alayhi salam. I think for me it's a reminder that this is a month of reflecting on that book. It's connecting to that book, reading more, reading and as much tafsir, listening to it and prayer. So for me, it's the Prophet ﷺ. If you look at the Prophet, we know that he was very generous in Ramadan, so generosity, giving, sadaqah, giving zakat, and so forth. But also the fact that he did exert himself in Quran and also prayer. But if you look at the Tarawih prayer, what are you doing in the prayer? You're reading Quran. So it's really just about it's connecting to the Book of Allah is probably in any shape or form you want to do that. It doesn't have to necessarily just be reciting it, but whatever way you connect to the Book of Allah, you should try to do so, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Thank you very much to our beloved Sheikh Amr Jameel for joining us on today's show Ask the Sheikh. I'd like to thank all listeners for joining us this evening, and we hope you'll all join us tomorrow evening, where we're honoured to once again have Sheikh Amr joining us, and we'll look even deeper into some of the more fiqh-related questions for Ramadan, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, once again. في أمان الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. جزاك الله خير.